well, from there on, you were Australia has been able to attract a lot of people doing cultural studies and that kind of stuff, and suddenly it's leading all the Western countries in media literacy. Now, how did that come about? That was fairly quick. I mean,
Yeah, this strange phenomenon that the places which seem in schools to be the most developed seem to be most distant from the major metropolises. That's interesting to explore. I can remember when I was coming back from England after studying, I came back via Toronto actually, because at that stage Marshall McLuhan was alive and I wanted to talk with him about some of his ideas. He was one of the people that I'd respected at that time. And after we'd talked for a couple of days, I said, look, I'm going back to a desert. It's physically a desert, culturally it's pretty well a desert. Nothing's happening in media education. What's your advice? I mean, it sounds pretty depressing. Where do you start? And he said, look, that's the best possible place in the world to begin, because you don't have to take on board all of the legacies from old attempts. So, and he was right, because in some of the eastern states places, there was a very strong film history course and film culture course and so on. In order to get media studies going, you had to occupy their space, and that was very difficult to do. Whereas in West Australia, we didn't have that, and that was a very fortunate coincidence. So we were able to start from scratch. Now, when you look at where the really interesting developments have taken place around the world, Scotland, Wales, the north of England, not the south as much, Australia and parts of Canada, geographically they're isolated from the major metropolises and therefore have had to fend for themselves a little bit and sometimes have some sort of strong cultural identity as distinct from the metropolis. And I think that's a really important factor in the development of the courses. I think that's a really important reason, just the geography and that cultural identity, why some places have accelerated at a greater rate than others.
Well, let's take a look at the curriculum in the Western Australian board, for example. What would a student who just got into high school take in media literacy? Would you take a course in media literacy?
If the student just coming into secondary school would have to study some media as part of the English course, varies between about 15 and 25% of the units. This is all on paper. I'll get to the reality in a moment. Now, in addition, the student can do media studies as a pure subject. They must do the English part, and they can do media studies as well if they wish. When they get beyond year 10, which is about 15 years of age, again, as part of their English through to matriculation into university, they have to do a media component, and it's becoming increasingly emphasised in the exam system at the top of the secondary scale. The lower secondary kids don't do exams, but the top of the secondary do, so it's compulsory. And again, they've got the option at the upper level of doing extra media studies if they wish. The media studies courses tend to be taught by specialist media studies teachers or people who are committed, and so my view is that at the moment, in most cases, the reality is that there's pretty good delivery of those courses. In the case of English, it's much patchier. Some teachers don't feel empowered enough to be able to take on the media studies aspects, and therefore just pay lip service to it, or teach it very badly or don't teach it at all. So that there's still a huge gap between the syllabuses and what actually is the delivery in the classroom.